To bend the knotted oak, a campaign set in the Iron Kingdoms. Boat arrival at Corvis, a darkness falls. The creaking of the boat echoed across the water as it glided slowly through the murky depths of the black river. Fog clung to the surface like ghostly fingers, thickening as the last traces of sunlight bled out behind the horizon. The air was damp and cold, filled with the smell of brackish water and rotting wood. Ahead, the looming silhouette of Corvis rose out of the mist, its towering spires and dark, crooked buildings casting jagged shadows across the river. Faint lights flickered along the docks. Lanterns hanging from rusted posts, offering little warmth to the hooded figures huddled near the piers. The occasional torchlight revealed faces weathered by life in the underbelly of the city, their eyes darting nervously as if expecting trouble in every corner. As the boat drifted closer, the sounds of Corvis grew louder. The low hum of voices mingled with the distant clatter of horse hooves on cobblestone streets, punctuated by the occasional shout or crash. Somewhere far off a bell tolled, its slow, somber ring resonating in the night air like a warning. You'd been told the Broken Cog wasn't far from here, just past the docks and the maze of narrow, grimy streets. It was the kind of place where soldiers and smugglers shared drinks, and no one asked too many questions, perfect for a reunion with your old sergeant, if she was still the same woman you remembered from the war. As you disembark, boots landing with a thud on the slick wooden pier, you can feel the weight of the city pressing down upon you. Dark alleys twisting off into the distance, disappearing into the gloom. The water behind you laps quietly against the dock, but everything else felt still, waiting. A heavy mist rolled in from the river, swallowing the edges of the dirt street ahead, leaving only the glow of flickering lanterns to guide you. The streets were almost too quiet now, too many eyes watching from the shadows, too few footsteps in the open. The Broken Cog was waiting just around the corner, tucked between two crumbling buildings like a secret in plain sight. The night was thick with tension, like the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to snap. As you made your way into the depths of Corvis, the feeling only grew stronger. This wasn't the same city you had known before the war, but the sergeant would be there, waiting, with the drink and the scars of battles that had never truly ended. Inside the Broken Cog, calm before the storm. The heavy door of the Broken Cog swings open, letting in the cool evening air and the faint sounds of your boots across the dirt pathways outside. Inside, the tavern is alive with the warm glow of lanterns and the hum of conversation. Just the typical chatter and laughter of a city going about its business. The bar is busy, filled with a mix of patrons from all walks of life. Soldiers in blue Cygnaran uniforms share drinks with dock workers fresh off their shifts. Traders, fresh from the market, laugh and boast about their day's profits. A few mercenaries in worn leathers swap stories of their latest contract over mugs of ale, their voices raised in friendly competition. The tavern is a comfortable, well-worn place with low wooden beams and walls lined with relics of battles long past. Old shields, cracked swords, and faded banners from forgotten campaigns. It's a place where everyone knows they can find a stiff drink and a quiet corner if needed. Tonight, though, the mood is light, and the fire crackling in the hearth casts a warm, welcoming glow over the room. At the bar, Donnell Iron Hand Thorne, the owner and barkeep, keeps things running smoothly, his metal prosthetic clanging softly as he pours drinks and moves with the kind of practiced ease that suggests he's been in this business for a long time. He nods at the regulars and cracks the occasional joke, his grizzled face breaking into a rare smile as he hands off mugs of ale to waiting customers. In the corner, a small group of musicians pluck at stringed instruments, filling the air with a soft, lilting melody that rises and falls with the conversation around it. The atmosphere is easygoing, with the sound of clinking mugs and good-natured laughter carrying through the room. At one table, near the back, your old sergeant sits alone, her back to the wall as she surveys the room with the sharp eyes of a woman who's seen more than her fair share of battle. She's dressed in tailored clothing dyed the colors of the Cygnar flag now, but there's no mistaking the military bearing. Her features are hardened by years of service, but her expression softens slightly when she catches the sight of your group approaching. The broken cog is bustling, but it's a friendly sort of chaos. No one's looking for trouble tonight. The tavern feels safe, tucked away from the more dangerous parts of Corvis, where life can be harsh and fleeting. Here people come to forget their troubles for a while, to share a drink and a story, and to feel the simple comfort of a familiar company. For now, everything in Corvis feels steady and routine. The city hums with life outside, and though there's always an edge of unpredictability in a place like this, tonight is just another night for now. The ale flows, the music plays, and the city of Corvis breathes easy. Sergeant Curie's sharp, familiar gaze finds you immediately, a wide grin breaking across her weathered face as she waves you over. Curie hadn't changed much since you'd last seen her. Her hair, once tightly cropped, had grown out a bit. Those streaks of gray now threaded through the brown. The leather armor she wore bore the signs of wear, but her posture was as strong and confident as ever. Upon her chest lays a golden lion brooch, indicative of her omitted appointment in government service. "About time you lot showed up," she called out as you approach, her voice warm, teasing. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten your sergeant." As you all settle around the table, the noise of the tavern becomes a comforting background hum. Mugs of ale were passed around, the first round already on the table, compliments of Curie. Together you exchanged knowing looks before diving into the familiar rhythm of rekindled friendship. The first few minutes were filled with laughter, old war stories spilling out as naturally as if you'd never left each other's side. Curie was at the heart of it all, recounting a tale about her near miss during the Cygnaran Civil War with the ease of someone who had told it 100 times before. She had a way of making even the darkest moments seem lighter, her hearty laugh punctuating the story as she exaggerated the part about you getting caught in a Gadoran ambush. "I swear, you should have seen your faces," she said, leaning back in her chair and grinning widely. "I've never seen anyone move so fast. When they realized the Condorans were closing in, thought we were all dead, but we managed to make it out, somehow." The table erupted in laughter, the memories of old campaigns sparking more stories, each one more ridiculous than the last. There were moments when the conversation grew quieter, though, when Curie's smile faded just slightly, and her eyes took on a distant look, Those were the moments when the darker parts of the war crept into the conversation, the ones no one really wanted to dwell on for too long. Every time the mood dipped, Curie would raise her mug in a toast, her voice loud and clear, cutting through the somberness with a joke or another tale of survival. Around you, the tavern was filled with people, each group lost in their own conversation, their own stories. A table of steel-head mercenaries was especially rowdy, their laughter and boisterous tales competing with the music. The largest of them, Jarek, had a booming voice that carried across the room as he loudly recounted a recent skirmish with some trollkin in the Thornwood. His comrades, Lena and Coran, laughed along, clearly used to his exaggerations, though their eyes were always on alert. Near the fire sat a group of Cygnaran military officers, their blue uniforms still pressed, though their faces looked tired. Captain Braith, a stern woman with a scar running down her cheek, kept a watchful eye on the tavern, her drink barely touched. The younger officer beside her, Lieutenant Darrow, was more relaxed, his focus shifting between the musicians and his drink, while Sergeant Falk, grizzled and worn, seemed content just to sit in silence, his gaze distant. In the corner near the bar, Huron, the Whisperer, a weary man with sharp eyes, sat alone, watching everything with quiet intensity. Known for dealing in secrets, his presence was a reminder that in Corvis, even in a place as comfortable as the Broken Cog, the city's underworld was never far away. The music shifted to a softer, slower tune, and the flickering lantern light gave the room a warm, golden glow. For you all, this moment with Curie was a reminder of the bonds you'd forged during the war. Bonds that had weathered time and distance. You shared stories, drank to old comrades, and for a few hours the weight of the world outside seemed to fade away. Curie's laughter rang out again, the sound rich and full as she leaned forward. "I'll tell you this much," she said, raising her mug. "If things go to hell in this city, and they always do, you lot are the ones I want at my back." You all click your mugs together in agreement. A sense of familiarity and belonging settles over the table as the night wears on. The city watch arrive. Sergeant Curie is arrested. The night in the Broken Cog has settled into a comfortable rhythm. The flickering lanterns cast warm shadows across the walls, and the low murmur of conversation was broken by occasional laughter from your group around Sergeant Curie's table. Curie and you had been reminiscing, losing yourselves in war stories from the Cygnaran Civil War, where bonds had been forged in fire and blood. But outside, the streets of Corvis were growing darker, the cold damp of the river creeping into the bones of the city. The muddy roads had emptied save for the distant clap of hooves and the occasional shuffle of someone slipping into the shadows. In the murky, narrow alleys, figures moved quietly, avoiding attention, thieves, informants, and those who had no business being seen. Suddenly, the door of the tavern was thrown open, banging against the wall with the resounding crash. The warm, hazy light of the room was pierced by a chilling gust of wind from outside, and with it the heavy footfalls of the city watch. 6 men entered, their uniforms dark and grim, their faces set in hard lines. The mood in the tavern shifted in an instant, conversation dying as heads turned towards the door. The musicians' fingers stumbled on their instruments, the last note hanging awkwardly in the air before the silence took over. At their head was Lieutenant Artis, a man known for his ruthlessness on the streets of Corvis. His eyes, like ice chips, scanned the room quickly before locking on to Kiri. His expression was cold, devoid of anything resembling warmth or recognition. "Sergeant Kiri," Artis called out, his voice cutting through the thick air of the tavern like a blade. "You're coming with us." The room tensed. Patrons leaned back in their seats, eyes flicking between the watchman and Kiri. Conversation turned to whisper. The tavern wasn't unused to seeing people hauled off by the city watch, but never someone like Kiri. She stood slowly, pushing back her chair, the scraping sound loud in the quiet. "What's this about, Artis?" Kiri asked, her voice steady but with an edge of disbelief. The camaraderie of the evening had drained from her face, replaced by the hardened expression of a soldier. "The Lord Mayor has been assassinated," Artis said flatly. His words hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. "You're under arrest for conspiracy." The tavern seemed to hold its breath. You can feel the tension crackling in the air like the moments before a storm. Kiri's eyes widened for a split second, but she quickly regained her composure. "This is a mistake," she said, her voice sharp. "You know I had nothing to do with this." Artis stepped forward, unbothered by her protest. The rest of his men fanned out behind him, their hands resting on the pummels of their swords. "Orders are from the top, Kiri. We'll sort it out later." Two of the watchmen moved in, steel shackles clinking ominously in their hands. You could see it in Kiri's eyes, the flash of panic she quickly buried beneath her hardened exterior. She glanced towards you, the weight of the unspoken words passing between her and her old comrades. Kiri had always been the type to stand tall, even when the odds were against her. But this, an accusation of assassination? Something deeper, something sinister was at play. And now she was in the crosshairs. The tavern had gone still, the patrons watching intently but staying silent. No one wanted to get involved. Even Jarek, the boisterous steelhead mercenary from earlier, kept his head low. Kiri didn't resist as the manacles were clamped around her wrists. She straightened her back, her voice low as she addressed you. "Find out who's behind this," she said quietly, her gaze fierce, "before it's too late." The watchmen led her out, their boots heavy on the wooden floor. The door swung shut behind them with a thud, leaving the tavern in cold silence, broken only by the distant sound of a glass being placed down at the bar. You're left in the flickering light of the lanterns, the weight of the moment pressing down on you. Outside, the streets of Corvis were growing darker by the second. Somewhere in the twisting alleys, secrets were being kept and dangerous men were making plans. But in this moment, one thing was clear. You have just been pulled into something far bigger than yourself. Now, in a city on the edge, with dark forces stirring beneath the surface, you find yourselves drawn into a deadly web of intrigue. The assassination of the Lord Mayor has sparked a citywide lockdown, and the streets of Corvis, always dangerous, are now filled with hidden threats. But finding the truth will not be easy. You must navigate the treacherous streets of Corvis as the city locks down and the clock ticks towards Kiri's execution. You will need to make alliances, cross dangerous paths, and fight for your survival in a city where danger lurks in every shadow. The truth behind the assassination is out there, but in Corvis nothing is ever what it seems, and not everyone can be trusted. Will you uncover the conspiracy in time to save your sergeant? Or will you also be consumed by the darkness creeping over the city of ghosts? Welcome to Corvis. Your journey begins now.